Today is June 11th, 2026, and what happened in the 12 hours between Monday night and Tuesday afternoon over the Strait of Hormuz is one of the cleanest, coldest, most operationally significant sequences this entire 103-day conflict has produced. It began on the night of June 9th at approximately 7:33 p.m. Eastern, when a U.S. Army AH-64 Apache attack helicopter conducting a routine patrol over regional waters off the coast of Oman near the mouth of the strait went into the water. Both crew members ejected and made it into the sea. And then the rescue that followed made military history in a way that nobody outside of Task Force 59 predicted. The Saronic Corsair, a 24-foot autonomous unmanned surface vessel, a robot boat built by a Texas-based startup, deployed by the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet Task Force 59 unit since late March 2026, located both aviators in the open water and picked them up within approximately 2 hours of the crash. The Corsair transported them to a rendezvous point on the water, where they were hoisted up by helicopter for further transport to medical care. Both crew members are in stable condition, and the rescue is the first publicly confirmed use of an autonomous, unmanned surface vessel to rescue downed air crew in real-world combat conditions in the history of the United States military. Defense Scoop confirmed it. Bloomberg confirmed it. The War Zone confirmed it. CENTCOM spokesperson Captain Tim Hawkins confirmed it directly. The Corsair was chosen for the mission because of its proximity and capability. A robot boat went into the same contested waters where an Apache was just shot down and brought back 2 American service members without putting a single additional human life at risk in the process. That is the outcome. Now here's the story underneath the outcome. Because the Apache did not go down because of mechanical failure. 2 U.S. officials and a third source confirmed to CNN, Axios, and The Aviationist that an Iranian Shahed one-way attack drone struck the Apache. Trump confirmed it on Truth Social that same morning. I have just been informed by our great military that last night the Iranians shot down one of our highly sophisticated Apache helicopters while patrolling over the Strait of Hormuz. There were 2 pilots involved. Both are safe and uninjured. Nevertheless, the United States must, of necessity, respond to this attack. And by 5 p.m. Eastern on June 9th, less than 24 hours after the Apache went into the water, CENTCOM began launching what it described as self-defense strikes against air defense, ground control stations, and surveillance radar sites near the Strait of Hormuz, Keshem Island, Sirik, Jask, Bandar Abbas, Minab. The IRGC's coastal surveillance architecture, the radar network that has been providing the Islamic Republic's eyes over the world's most strategically important waterway, systematically struck across multiple sites in a coordinated strike package that CENTCOM described as a proportional response to unjustified Iranian aggression. Iran shot down an Apache. America destroyed Iran's ability to see the strait. That is the sequence. That is the answer. And Trump's statement after it was complete tells you exactly where this conflict's trajectory has shifted. Start with the Corsair rescue because the military technology story embedded in that operation deserves full analytical treatment beyond the headline. The U.S. military's first publicized use of an autonomous surface vessel to locate and retrieve downed aircrew in real-world warfare marks a milestone following years of experimentation with different types of sea drones. The Saronic Corsair is a 3-meter-long autonomous unmanned surface vessel designed for long-range, extended-duration missions in challenging maritime environments. It can reach speeds exceeding 35 knots and carry payloads over 456 kilograms across distances greater than 1,000 nautical miles. What sets it apart from other USVs is its fully autonomous navigation system powered by artificial intelligence, using multispectrum sensors that enable 360-degree passive target detection, day or night. CENTCOM has confirmed that Saronic Corsair was the uncrewed surface vessel that rescued the crew, and the use of Saronic Corsair marks the first known instance of a drone boat being used to rescue personnel. Task Force 59 began fielding these drones in the CENTCOM region in late March. Now, think about the operational significance of that last detail. Task Force 59 has been deploying these autonomous surface vessels in the Gulf since late March 2026, primarily for maritime surveillance and patrol. The Apache shoot-down forced an unplanned real-world test of the platform's rescue capability, and it worked perfectly. The concept of using expendable robotic boats to retrieve downed crews in contested waters has obvious implications. A manned rescue helicopter entering the same airspace where an Apache was just shot down faces the same threat environment that brought the Apache down. The Corsair faces none of those constraints. It is unmanned. It can be sent into contested waters where a helicopter crew cannot safely operate. It finds the survivors using its AI-powered multispectrum sensors in the dark. It picks them up, transports them to a safer location, and the helicopter extraction happens at a point the enemy cannot easily target. This is the operational concept the U.S. military has been developing for years. Manned-unmanned teaming where the robot takes the risk so the human does not have to. The Apache crew spent approximately 2 hours in the water before the Corsair reached them. The 2 hours they spent in the water are the 2 hours it would have taken an enemy with a functioning surveillance and targeting network to find them and direct fast attack boats to their location. The radar sites that were struck in the June 9th 10th CENTCOM strike package are the same radar sites that would have enabled that tracking. Striking them within 24 hours of the Apache going down was not just proportional retaliation. It was the elimination of the surveillance architecture that could have threatened the rescue operation itself. Now to the Iranian Shahed drone that brought down the Apache. Unnamed officials clarified that an Iranian Shahed drone is believed to be the culprit for the attack, though it is not yet clear whether it was a deliberately targeted action or an accidental collision. A U.S. official told Axios the investigation determined that an Iranian drone hit the helicopter, causing it to crash. Iran's response was to go into full denial. Iranian state television, citing a military source, stated, "We have not conducted any offensive air operations in the Strait of Hormuz in the past 24 hours. Read that carefully. The IRGC's official position is that a Shahed drone struck nothing. A helicopter simultaneously went into the water at the mouth of the Strait of Hormuz, and both events were completely unrelated. That explanation is not credible to anyone tracking this conflict with honest attention, and the U.S. military's response, initiated at the Commander-in-Chief's direction and striking Iranian air defense infrastructure within hours, confirms that the American government did not find the explanation credible either. Whether the strike on the Apache was deliberate targeting or the result of a Shahed drone operating in the same airspace and colliding with the helicopter matters for the legal and intelligence analysis of intent. It does not matter for the operational calculus of the American response. An Iranian armed drone brought down an American military aircraft during a ceasefire over international waters during a routine patrol, killing or injuring no American personnel, only because both crew members ejected successfully and the Corsair reached them in time. The American response was proportional, targeted, and executed in hours. The CENTCOM strike package that executed across multiple sites on the night of June 9th to 10th deserves its full geographic treatment because the specific targets chosen and the areas struck reveal the operational priority that American planners applied to the response. Iran International reported that U.S. airstrikes targeted Iran's Sirik and Jask naval bases, an air defense position in Bandar Abbas, coastal missile batteries in Minab and Keshem, and the port of Keshem. Explosions were heard on Keshem Island in the Strait of Hormuz, confirming strikes in Bandar Abbas, Minab, and Keshem Island, with the Islamic Republic News Agency reporting that explosions occurred in Keshem Island and Hana, areas described as military in nature. The IRGC confirmed that U.S. strikes damaged a telecommunications tower in Sirik and destroyed 2 water tanks in the Bamani district. Let's go through each location. Bandar Abbas is the IRGC's primary naval operating base in the Strait region, and one of Iran's most important commercial ports. The radar installations and air defense positions around Bandar Abbas are pointed directly at the Strait's traffic lanes, giving the IRGC the ability to track every vessel entering or exiting the waterway. Striking the air defense position in Bandar Abbas degrades both the maritime tracking capability and the air defense coverage over the region's most significant IRGC naval base simultaneously. Jask is strategically positioned at the eastern approach to the strait, the point at which vessels coming from the Indian Ocean enter the Strait of Hormuz before reaching the main navigable channel. Radar and surveillance infrastructure at Jask provides the IRGC's first look at commercial traffic approaching from the east, the direction from which tankers transiting from Gulf producers to Asian markets must come. Eliminating the Jask naval base infrastructure removes the IRGC's eastern early warning capability for the strait approach. Sirik, Minab, and Keshem Island collectively provide the IRGC with the coverage of the strait's main navigable channel, the 24-mile-wide waterway, through which 20% of global seaborne oil and LNG transits daily. The communications tower struck in Sirik and the facilities hit on Keshem are the nerve connections between the IRGC's surveillance radar picture and the fast attack boat formations and drone launch teams that act on that picture. Remove the radar, cut the communications. The IRGC's Mosquito fleet operating near the strait is now working from secondary and tertiary sensor positions with significantly less complete coverage and significantly degraded coordination capability. Now, Iran's retaliation, because the IRGC's response to the radar strike package reveals more about the regime's actual military position than any official statement has disclosed since the ceasefire began. The IRGC said the attack on the Bahrain-based fleet came in response to recent American strikes on Jask, Sirik, and Keshem in southern Iran, with the IRGC Navy launching a drone attack on the 5th Naval Fleet in Bahrain and a missile attack on the Ali al-Salam base in Kuwait at 2:30 a.m. Iran retaliated with a drone attack on the U.S. 5th Fleet in Bahrain and a missile attack on a U.S. airbase in Jordan, state media reported. The IRGC also claimed it had struck 21 U.S. military targets across the region, a number that the subsequent damage assessments from CENTCOM and regional partners did not validate with confirmed impacts. Jordan's air defense systems intercepted the incoming missiles. Bahrain's systems intercepted their portion of the salvos. Kuwait's defenses handled their engagement. The damage assessments from every government that received IRGC missiles on June 9th or 10th produced the same result. All intercepted or missed, 0 successful impacts on American or Allied military assets. And then the diplomatic fallout. Bahrain, Kuwait, and Jordan publicly condemned the Iranian strikes against them, regardless of how Foreign Minister Araghchi framed them as legitimate self-defense. Araghchi warned that foreign forces operating near Iran are exposed to risks stemming from human errors, plane accidents, or potentially being caught in crossfire, and said, to reduce risk, the best solution is for foreign forces to exit as soon as possible an environment which will never be hospitable to a hostile presence. That statement is worth holding alongside the outcome of the IRGC's retaliatory strikes, missiles fired at Bahrain, Kuwait, and Jordan, countries that are not the source of the radar strikes. The IRGC was retaliating against, producing 0 hits on American military assets, immediate condemnations from the countries attacked, and a regional diplomatic environment in which Iran's foreign minister is on the phone managing the aftermath of military decisions he had no role in authorizing. This is not deterrence. This is a regime firing its remaining ballistic missile inventory at countries it is not at war with, failing to hit anything of consequence, and watching the diplomatic fallout deepen the regional isolation that 103 days of military and economic pressure have already produced. Trump's statement after the strikes is where the entire strategic picture comes into sharpest focus. Trump stated on Truth Social, Iran's military is a complete and total mess. Much of it, like their Navy and Air Force, doesn't even exist anymore. They have been completely defeated. Iran is all talk and no action. The bully of the Middle East is dead. They've taken too long to negotiate a deal that would have been great for them. Now they will have to pay the price. Read that last sentence again slowly. They have taken too long to negotiate a deal that would have been great for them. Now they will have to pay the price. That is not a frustrated president venting about a difficult negotiation. That is a president who has moved from the phase of applying pressure to force a deal to the phase of describing the cost of not having accepted the deal when the window existed. The shift from would have been great for them to now they will have to pay the price is a temporal shift. It describes a past opportunity that is now closed and a present consequence that has begun to be delivered. The radar strikes are the first installment of that consequence. The deliberate preservation of the higher value targets, the power plants, the bridges, the port infrastructure, the remaining ballistic missile storage that the JC uranium retrieval plan requires, intact for its own operational success, is the visual demonstration that the installments have a progression the regime has not yet seen the full extent of. The price being described is not fully paid with radar sites. It is being paid in sequence. The EA-18G Growler's role in the strike package deserves full technical treatment because the electronic warfare element is what made the radar strikes possible, without American aircraft losses, and it illustrates the continuing dominance of American CAD capability over any Iranian air defense architecture. The Growler entered the operational area completely passive, all active electronic systems off, the ALQ-218 tactical receiving system listening for any radar transmission from the Iranian coastal positions. When Iranian air defense radar systems activated to track the incoming aircraft, the ALQ-218 geolocated each transmitting radar precisely. The Growler's jamming package then flooded those radar frequencies with interference that degraded the ability of the Iranian systems to process return signals into coherent target pictures. Iranian radar operators saw static instead of aircraft. The radar warning receivers and Iranian air defense command nodes received noise rather than tracking data. The F-16CJ Wild Weasels following the Growler into the operational area waited for any Iranian radar system that activated in response to their presence, detected the emission with onboard sensors, and destroyed the emitting radar with AGM-88 HARM anti-radiation missiles that homed directly on radar emissions at Mach 2. The entire targeting sequence, from Growler passive detection to HARM impact, can complete in seconds. The radar system that turned on to track an incoming American aircraft handed the Wild Weasel the targeting solution that destroyed it before it could complete an engagement solution against the Wild Weasel. Iran has been using delayed activation tactics to complicate this exact engagement, waiting for aircraft to be nearly directly overhead before activating radar to compress the window between radar activation and available response time. The June 9th-10th strike package executed against these tactics successfully, producing confirmed explosions at multiple radar and air defense sites across the Strait region without confirmed American aircraft losses. The Corsairs' successful rescue brings the operational circle of June 9th 10th to its most important conclusion from a military technology standpoint. Before June 9th, the Corsair was a surveillance and patrol asset, a tool for extending Task Force 59's maritime domain awareness in the Gulf without putting human crews in contested waters. After June 9th, the Corsair is a combat search and rescue asset, with a confirmed operational employment in real-world combat conditions. The implications of that shift extend beyond the Iran conflict to every future theater, where the United States might need to recover downed aircrew in contested maritime environments. The doctrine for combat search and rescue has historically required sending manned helicopters and manned fixed-wing aircraft into the same threat environment that brought down the asset being rescued, accepting that the rescue crew faces the same threats that the downed crew faced. The Corsair concept changes that calculus. Send the robot first. The robot enters that contested area, locates the survivors using AI-powered multi-spectrum sensors, picks them up, and transports them to a safer location where the manned helicopter can complete the extraction without entering the most contested portion of the threat environment. The Apache crew spent approximately 2 hours in the Gulf of Oman before the Corsair reached them. That 2-hour window, in a different operational environment, one where the radar network had not been struck within hours, and where fast attack boats were actively prosecuting a search for downed aviators, could have produced a very different outcome. The fact that the radar network was struck in less than 24 hours, and the Corsair was already deployed and ready, removed both of those threats simultaneously. The operational sequence was designed before June 9th and executed perfectly on June 9th and 10th. Here is the complete, honest strategic assessment of where June 11th, 2026 leaves this conflict and what the next 72 hours will determine. Iran shot down an American Apache with a Shahed drone during a nominally active ceasefire over international waters during a routine patrol. Iran then denied the attack while a U.S. Army officer photographed the wreckage of an Iranian Shahed in the Apache debris field. America destroyed Iran's coastal surveillance and air defense architecture across multiple sites at the mouth of the strait in less than 24 hours. Iran retaliated by firing ballistic missiles and drones at Bahrain, Kuwait, and Jordan, countries that are not America, failing to hit anything of consequence and producing immediate public condemnations from every country it attacked. Trump stated publicly that Iran has taken too long to negotiate a deal and will now pay the price. The radar sites are paid. The question is what the next installment of the price addresses. The Qatar diplomatic off-ramp that the competitor script identified as the last realistic diplomatic pathway has not been publicly activated in the 24 hours since the Apache shootdown. Araghchi's public statements about Iran's inherent right to self-defense and his warnings about foreign forces being exposed to risks are the diplomatic framing of an institution whose military is conducting autonomous operations that its own foreign minister was not consulted on. The IRGC regional commander who authorized the Shahed drone operation over Oman, whether the strike was deliberate or the result of a one-way attack drone running in the same airspace as the Apache, made that decision within the decentralized command architecture the IRGC built specifically to survive leadership losses. The same architecture that produced the Apache shootdown can produce the next incident without any authorization from the civilian government, without any notification to Araghchi, and without any consultation with Kalibaf's peace negotiating track. The ceasefire is nominally in place. The operational reality in the Strait of Hormuz right now is two sides conducting precision military operations against each other's assets, while the ceasefire label persists as a diplomatic convenience for both parties. Iran spent 20 years building the radar network that was struck on June 9th, 10th. The eyes and ears of the strait are dark. The Corsair is back in the water, watching. The Growler is back in the air, listening. And Trump has put the next installment's context on the public record. They took too long for the deal. Now they pay the price. Subscribe and turn on notifications now, because the next development in this sequence is hours away, not days. Drop your assessment in the comments. Watch the next video right here. Before we close, 3 analytical threads deserve full treatment because they connect June 9th and 11th sequence to the larger picture that determines what comes next. The first is the IRGC's decentralized command architecture, and why it is the most dangerous single structural feature of the current conflict environment for both sides. The IRGC's 2008 reform specifically distributed operational autonomy across 31 semi-autonomous regional corps, designed to survive leadership losses by ensuring that no single decapitation strike could disable the organization's ability to conduct operations. That structure is exactly what it was designed to be, survivable. But in the current diplomatic environment, where Kalibaf is simultaneously Iran's loudest hawk and its chief peace negotiator, where Araghchi is conducting back-channel diplomacy while IRGC commanders are conducting drone operations he was not notified of, where the civilian president reportedly resigned because the IRGC had sidelined the civilian government entirely. That decentralized command architecture is producing autonomous military decisions that actively undermine the diplomatic track. The IRGC regional commander in the Strait area, who authorized or whose forces conducted the Shahed drone operation that struck the Apache, did not consult the peace negotiating track before making that decision. He made an operational decision within his area of authority, and that decision produced a response that destroyed Iran's coastal surveillance architecture across multiple sites. The structural problem is not that individual IRGC commanders are rogue, it is that the institution's command architecture, designed for survivability, is producing autonomous military decisions in a diplomatic environment that requires coordination between the military and diplomatic tracks that the architecture does not provide for. The next autonomous IRGC decision in the Strait area could produce a strike on an American asset that triggers a response that is no longer proportional to the radar sites, that triggers the installment of the price that the radar sites were not. The second thread is the French Rafale shooting down an unidentified drone after it crossed into Latvian airspace under NATO command. Because this event in the Baltic, on the same week as the Apache shootdown and radar strikes in the Strait, is not an unrelated story. It is the same doctrinal pattern in a different theater, unmanned systems operating in contested or boundary airspace producing responses from manned air defense systems. Russia has been deploying drones across European airspace in ways that have forced NATO air defense responses from Finland to Poland to the Baltic states throughout 2026. The French Rafale intercept of an unidentified drone over Latvia is the most recent in a series of intercepts that is building an operational precedent for NATO air defense against small unmanned systems in sovereign airspace. The technical and doctrinal lessons from every APKWS intercept over the Strait, every phalanx engagement against Shahed swarms, every Iron Dome engagement against Hamas rockets, and every directed energy intercept against low-cost drones are being fed directly into the NATO air defense architecture as operational combat data that no exercise can replicate. The French intercept over Latvia and the American APKWS intercepts over the Strait are two data points in the same technological competition between cheap autonomous threats and air defense economics that is the defining military technology challenge of 2026. The Corsair's successful personnel rescue and the radar strike package's successful CD execution are two additional data points in the same technology competition. Unmanned systems extending operational reach into threat environments, while manned assets execute the precision strike missions that require human decision-making. The doctrinal integration of these two capabilities is the military technology story of this conflict that will define how every major power plans its air and maritime operations for the next decade. The third and final thread is what the radar strike's deliberate restraint, the decision not to hit power plants, bridges, and port infrastructure, tells you about the targeting architecture waiting to be executed if the diplomatic track does not produce results. The competitor script noted this directly. The power plants, the bridges, the port infrastructure that would complete the economic stranglehold if they were struck remain intact, not because they are off the list, but because the sequence has not reached them yet. The June 9th, 10th strikes were proportional to the Apache shoot-down. They targeted the specific infrastructure that enabled the Shahed drone operation and subsequent IRGC maritime surveillance. They did not target the infrastructure whose destruction would represent an irreversible escalation beyond the radar sites and air defense architecture that have been repeatedly struck throughout this conflict. That restraint is itself a message, calibrated, visible, and understood by every Iranian military planner who is watching the strike footprint and noting what was not struck. The uranium at Isfahan is under 400 plus meters of collapsed granite. The power plants that provide electricity to the tunnel complex's excavation equipment are intact. The road infrastructure that any logistics operation toward the tunnel complex would require is intact. The deliberate preservation of that infrastructure alongside the radar site strikes sends a specific signal. The targeting list has layers that have not been executed. The decision to execute against them is one authorization away. And the radar sites were the installment that followed the Apache, not the final installment of what Trump described as the price for taking too long. The IRGC needs to decide before the next regional commander makes the next autonomous decision whether it can absorb the installment that comes after the radar sites. Based on what happened to its coastal surveillance architecture in less than 24 hours, the answer to that question is visible in the satellite imagery of the Strait. What is no longer visible is the radar coverage that used to appear in that imagery. The eyes and ears are dark, the Corsair is in the water, the Growler is in the air, and the price is being delivered in sequence. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, drop your take in the comments, watch the next video right here. One final dimension that connects the Corsair rescue to the longer trajectory of autonomous military systems in this conflict, because the Task Force 59 story is one of the most consequential and least reported technology developments of the entire 103-day engagement. Task Force 59 was formed in 2021 and is headquartered in Bahrain. It is the U.S. Navy's first dedicated unmanned and artificial intelligence task force, specifically created to integrate AI and the latest robotic systems into maritime operations. When it was established, the concept of deploying autonomous surface vessels in a contested combat zone for surveillance, patrol, and potentially rescue missions was aspirational. The Iran conflict has turned it into operational doctrine validated by combat. Task Force 59 began fielding Corsair autonomous surface vessels in the CENTCOM region in late March 2026. Roughly 6 weeks after Operation Epic Fury began on February 28th. The deployment was initially framed as surveillance and maritime domain awareness support. The Apache rescue on June 9th demonstrated that the same platform, without any modification to its hardware, could execute a personnel recovery mission in a contested water environment, where sending a manned rescue helicopter posed unacceptable risk. The multi-spectrum AI sensors that make the Corsair effective at passive surveillance of IRGC fast attack boats at night are the same sensors that located 2 Apache crew members floating in the dark waters off Oman. The range and payload capacity that make the Corsair a viable long-duration patrol platform are the same characteristics that allowed it to reach the crew and transport them to safety. The operational versatility is not coincidence. It is the design philosophy of a platform built to operate in precisely the threat environment that the Strait of Hormuz represents. And the U.S. military has now confirmed in real-world combat conditions that this philosophy produces the intended outcome. Get American personnel home without putting additional American personnel in the threat environment to do it. The Corsair will be in the after-action review of this conflict as one of its most significant operational innovations, not because it destroyed anything, it did not, but because it solved the problem that the Apache's shoot-down created without creating a new problem in the process. That is the operational standard every military technology aspires to, and that most fails to achieve under combat conditions. The Corsair achieved it on June 9th, 2026. In the same waters where a Shahed drone struck an Apache, and America's response was measured in hours rather than days. Subscribe. Turn on notifications.